This is absolute tragedy. What you're witnessing is perhaps the greatest boxer of all time and one of the most unique sports legends at 39 during his last professional fight. This is what is universally known as the drama in the Bahama. He was way past his prime, way slower, out of shape and not supposed to be there. He was Muhammad Ali. Floating like a butterfly, stinging like a bee. He was the one and only king. He had captured the world using his mythical sports status to elevate himself into something more than an athlete, an icon, a philanthropist, and one of the most captivating human beings of the last 100 years. But then, hit after hit, time after time, the man that was known as Cassius Clay would pay an unforgiving price. Ali was the golden cow to milk until the last drop. He had to fight again, just like he did before, but now his decline had to be depicted. And what's more than absurd about all of this is that everybody knew his condition and the risk taken. This is the story of Muhammad Ali's last fight. The stubbornness of a hero of his time in not accepting his illness, and the exploitment of those who were around him. It was the media, journalists, organizers, coaches, managers, investors. They took every single thing that was left, from money to publicity, not caring about Ali's health and life. He wasn't as mobile, as fast, as mentally quick as remembered. And then it all came to an avoidable end. But what if it wasn't a story so simple to tell? If it wasn't only about getting hit and having health repercussions, but instead a succession of events and misconducts leading to a tragic result? What if Muhammad Ali was strict and forced to fight, even if he wanted to retire way before imagined, and he was telling that to us in the middle of that ring? Ali was a smart man. He knew that by 1975, his time as a boxer had to end. He had enough. He had the money, a family, and didn't want to risk it anymore. But since he was the reigning world champion and worldwide sports icon, his managers knew that even if he didn't want to give nothing more in the ring, he physically still could, and so they decided that he had to continue by any means necessary. Ali had to give more than imagined, in the ring, in the media, and economically to those around him. So he had to be persuaded, convinced to continue. After the thriller in Manila, Muhammad Ali took an hiatus from boxing, but people around him found a way to use him anyways. And in 1976, he was convinced to take part in something supposedly lighter than those grueling boxing battles he wanted to retire from. A supposed false battle, an exhibition, that's how they called it. Muhammad Ali was a fan of pro wrestling and so fascinated by it that he built his boxing character around an idea a pro wrestler called Gorgeous George gave him. He was attracted by entertainment since he was a kid, and then he became a world-class sportsman and entertainer. So when the wrestling world came calling, he thought it would be a different way to make money without a high risk of injuries and with the same possibility of being involved in a show for the people. A perfect way to retire from fighting while still technically being a fighter. And so a fight was set up and promoted between Muhammad Ali and Antonio Inoki, legendary pro wrestler of the Japanese scene, the man billed as the Oriental Hulk Hogan. Inoki wasn't only a choreography fighter, he was much more than that. trained in martial arts by a man who would throw him out of moving cars to toughen him up, Antonio was one of the first mixed martial artists in history. "If I have a chance to fight with you, I could make you slip on the canvas within 10 minutes, he wrote through an interpreter to Ali. $6 million were put up by Inoki, and the boxing world heavyweight champion couldn't say no, neither back down from those words. With a stage set for what sporting history would record as one of the first ever mixed martial arts battles, everything started to become bigger by the minutes, with the event being promoted and talked about all over the world. Ali versus Inoki. In the weeks prior, Ali worked the public and the media as best as he could to sell the fight.
Man, I can't lose over here. This is my last year. I can't go out the loser. I got to go out victorious. I got some movies to make.
Ali wanted to make movies and wanted 1976 to be his last year in boxing. Was he joking, or was he really thinking that? His desire was surely to retire as soon as possible, and he didn't want to take any part in a grueling real battle. According to various sources in Japan, Ali had assumed that he would take part in a fixed match against Inoki, just a fun show for the public, a pro wrestling event, and an easy payday. In a recently surfaced audio, Ali can be heard talking about the match, saying these words: "What I've promised to do is an exhibition fight. Inoki will not be hitting me with full force." But when Ali met with Inoki's interpreter at a press conference and asked when the rehearsal for the fight was, he was met with an unexpected answer: "There's no rehearsal." Antonio Inoki lived in the shadow of real fighters. He was taking part in pro wrestling, what people called and still do call fake fighting. He thought that he was disrespected, belittled for not fighting for real. But now he had his chance on a worldwide stage to embarrass the #1 real fighter, the #1 boxer in the world. Ali's management, after Muhammad's complaints, contacted Inoki's people with a new set of restrictions for the fight. No kicks while standing up, no throws, no locking holds, and no elbow strikes. They took away almost every move in Inoki's arsenal, but it wasn't enough. June 26, 1976, Tokyo's Budokan Stadium. In a full 15-round, hour-long fight, Ali would take several blows to his legs given by Inoki while lying down. Even if it couldn't be perfectly noticed in the video of the event, Ali was in excruciating pain and Inoki broke a foot after an absurd total of 64 kicks given. Muhammad Ali's leg was still swollen after 3 days, and doctors eventually found out that he had developed true blood clots in both his lower extremities. His personal doctor was called Ferdi Pacheco. Known as the Fight Doctor, Pacheco met Ali in 1960, and from there he was responsible of the great care and health Ali had at the time of his greatest battles. After the Inoki fight, the world champion had 2 more exhibition fights to endure. Pacheco advised him not to take part in them, but Ali did, regardless, and his already injured legs caught an infection. The situation was so severe that the legs almost got amputated. Ali recovered after spending 2 weeks in a Los Angeles hospital, but by the end of the year, while returning to the gym to train and doing sparring, the champion realized that he wasn't moving like he did before. Initially, he thought it was the proverbial ring rust, but this time it was different. It wasn't fatigue, it was something else. His legs didn't move as fast as his brain did. Muhammad Ali realized then that he was doomed. Even his managers, his people, his trainers and the media realized that he couldn't move like he did before, and that showed in his fight against Ken Norton. Won only by a few points in a decision filled with controversy, the Yankee Stadium booed Ali out of the ring for being the unjust winner. After 1976, Ali would never knock anyone out again. After beating Alfredo Evangelista in May 77, Ali had to face #1 contender Ernie Shavers that September. By this time, Dr. Ferdy Pacheco advised Ali to quit after blood was found in his urine. But Pacheco received nothing but indifference. The truth was that Ali eschewed promoters and agents who were with other boxers, but around him he had the worst people. Parasites who persuaded him into fighting and used his money to enrich themselves. One of his managers, Richard M. Hirschfield, was a criminal and a gangster who killed himself in jail. The then chairman of the Muhammad Ali Professional Sports Society, the society that lived around Ali, Harold Smith, used the champion's name to steal $21 million from the bank Wells Fargo. And his manager, Jabir Herbert Mohammed, was criticized for his strange handling of Ali's earnings. By late 1977, Ali was visibly, physically vulnerable, and so he was mentally. The more his legs weren't anymore keeping up, the more his stubbornness grew. In training, knowing that he couldn't anymore successfully try his technique of slipping away from punches due to being too slow, he decided that he could build up resistance to that same punches by simply getting punched. This way, he thought, he could tire his opponent and then strike when needed. It was a great formula as a boxer, but a disastrous one for the human brain. And on September 29, 1977, the champion had to defend his title against Ernie Shavers, the hardest hitting boxer there's ever been. That bout was nothing more than a dreadful and vicious beating endured by Ali, who wasn't able to slip away, to have that quickness to avoid those punches like he did before. And even though he won after an incredible comeback in the last round, this fight is regarded as the one that if he didn't take part in, if he retired like his doctor suggested, he would have saved himself from what would happen thereafter. Ferdy Pacheco, Ali's doctor, couldn't take it anymore. He was being ignored while Ali's health was deteriorating faster and faster, and the first signs of Parkinson's disease started to show by 1978, and no one around him still seemed to care. They wanted to milk that golden cow until it was dry of money, convincing Ali by simply telling him that if he retired, he wasn't going to be the greatest anymore. Pacheco walked away in between clouds of desperation. It was later discovered that Ali took 266 punches in the Ernie Shavers fight. In his first public interview weeks after the beating, his speech had slowed down by 16%.
One more year, my friend, I want to get out. I want to get out, why? Because I'm on top, still pretty. People out there see how pretty I still am. I'm still pretty, intelligent, invested well. And I want to get out while I'm still the champ. And this year be the best year.
Who's the strongest?
No, the strongest.
Strongest man, just in terms of
Ernie Shavers.
really?
Yeah, man. Stronger than Joe Frazier and George Foreman. He hit hard. He's got to hit on his record. And I don't know why I picked on him at this late in my career. I didn't really believe he was as good as he was. I predicted he was running around 7. But he was good. He took all I had and he hit real hard.
And by 1978, he was slurring his words and starting to have problems with his hands. They were trembling.
I've announced my retirement a couple times, and I unretired the next day. So I'm not gonna do it again, but this very well could be my last time in the ring.
Who knows? Ali may not have passed away now if it stopped when I asked. He may not have been trapped in a shell like he was for so many years. On February 15, 1978, an already ill Ali, but still the world champion, would face young boxer Leon Spinks in what the media predicted to be an easy fight for the champion. But they didn't know what Ali's people kept so private. even lying to themselves and believing everything was fine. That day, Ali would lose the world heavyweight title. He only did training for 12 rounds preparing for the fight. He was out of shape, sick, and really tired. But what would happen next would be, now that we know what his situation was, utterly incredible. The now former champion would ask and get a rematch, and even with his condition, he would train as hard as possible from as early as possible, flying to Russia for 3 exhibition matches and sparing over 200 rounds, finding an inexplicable stamina and winning back the world title for a 3rd time on September 15, 1978 in a heroic performance.
That's it, Mohammed, you're champion of the world again.
That moment, that very moment was amazing and last match possible for Ali. That would have been the perfect time to retire, and Ali, smart, he did so. On July 27, 1979, he announced to the world that he would be stepping away from boxing once and for all, vacating his world championship. But then, just after a few months, somebody told him, "You have to come back. We need the money." He made millions every fight he was in, 5.5 in his fight against George Foreman alone. But oddly enough, critics and journalists said that his comeback in 1980 was because he needed money. Where did all his earnings go? We'll never really know, even though it's not that difficult to imagine. On July 17, 1980, Muhammad Ali and world champion Larry Holmes signed to fight on October 2nd in Las Vegas. But Ali looked different. He wasn't using an high-voiced tone as before. He wasn't as quick in his thought processing. He looked so tired. Prior to the fight, due to his visible change in demeanor and condition, Ali was asked by the Nevada Athletic Commission to undergo a complete physical examination in Las Vegas before being allowed to fight again. His team refused, instead making Ali check into a private clinic that declared him fit to compete. In the days of promotion for the fight, the story told was that Ali was as light, if not lighter, than in his prime years. But there was a reason behind this. To make him lose weight, doctors within his team gave him thyroid medication, thus worsening his physical condition even more. They were drugging him to make him look lighter. At this point, the world was noticing, but Ali and his management kept saying that he was fine.
Right hand, Larry, that didn't hurt at all. You get the idea that Muhammad Ali might explode at any time, too.
Pinpoint accuracy now. He's really connected with Muhammad. And of course, those hook right hands that no one else throws in the business.
Holmes' trainer said that the then world champion didn't want to face Ali, knowing that he was deteriorating. Holmes knew, but in the fight he showed no mercy, declaring after that he was avoiding hitting with full force. After the fight, Holmes said that he held back a few times to keep from hurting him, and he cried. After leaving Ali in tremendous pain with a rib shot in the 9th round, Holmes said he told Ali, "Don't keep taking all this, you can't fight anymore." All that really mattered was that an already ill Muhammad Ali took another tough, unnecessary beating, and actor Sylvester Stallone, who was watching at ringside, was shocked, calling the fight an autopsy of a living man. And even if it may seem like an exaggeration, the many hits taken by the man formerly known as Cassius Clay aggravated once more his symptoms. By this time, he couldn't touch his nose properly and was weakened by the steroid medication that they made him use. Ali was paid almost $9 million for this fight, as much as ever in his career. It was called the last hurrah, but what it really was his second to last disgraceful beating in the boxing ring. Second to last, you heard that right, because they made him fight again at 39 with worsening conditions, putting him against a 12 years younger boxer named Trevor Berbick. Not only this would have been the most dangerous fight for Ali's condition, but also one of the most dreadful managed high-profile sports events ever.
I want the title 4 times, and to get it 4 times I have to prove I'm qualified because I look so bad with Larry Holmes. People have a right to say, you washed up, you're finished. I was sick. I'm taking on the toughest man next to Holmes, that's Trevor Berbick. After beating him, I'll be ranked in the top 10 by number 4.
Ali's conditions were so obvious that no American boxing boards wanted to give him a license to fight. On the contrary, Ali declared to be as fit as ever, even showing medical records to the press to prove it. But everybody knew by now why he was still fighting. He was doing that because he couldn't do otherwise, as accepting fights was a way to economically support the undeserving people around him.
I can remember times when he had made his mind up not to fight, and people would actually come around and try to get him interested in fighting again. Everyone around him isn't there because they're trying to help him. They're there because they want another payday. And they'll do anything that he wants so that he'll be happy with them and he'll let them stay there.
Fight, after being rejected by every American boxing board, found a place in the Bahamas, in Nassau. One of the promoters for the fight was a mysterious man called James Cornelius, that according to Ali's manager, lived across the street from the house of the greatest. Cornelius, owner of the mysterious agency Sport International Ltd, offered $4 million for the fight to take place. Berbick's purse to be paid was at around $300,000, but a week before the event, little money was put on the table, and no one had been paid to build the temporary stadium that was to be erected on a high school baseball field. Adding to that, Trevor Berbick still had to be paid $250,000 for the fight. The Jamaican born fighter declared, "I want all my money before I fight." On the evening of the day of the fight, he had still not been given all of his money until TV company Select TV stepped in to pay the remaining $250,000. Before that, the famous manager Don King, working for Berbick, was beat up by 4 unidentified men, one of them actually being James Cornelius, who was threatening King and telling him to accept the fact that Berbick was not gonna be paid. It was then discovered that Ali's team had received $4 million of flat fee, but they declared that Ali could only expect $1 million. They were scamming him too, just like they did all the years prior. The boxing event itself was a total disaster, supposed to start at 6 p.m. but delayed to 3 hours after because nobody had boxing gloves. There was also no ring bell, and this problem was solved by a television producer who brought to the ring a cowbell and a hammer from his trailer. The greatest had come into the fight well overweight, and it was feared that he could suffer more permanent damage. The fight wasn't close, but Ali fought like a lion. He didn't dance like he used to in the ring, but he for sure was fighting, even if he shouldn't have been in there. Troubled by developing signs of his disease against a 12 years younger fighter, he would resist, he would go the distance, but he would suffer again, an unnecessary beating that surely took a toll on his brain.
Do you agree now, Muhammad, that you should retire and never come back in this ring again?
I'm sure that this is enough to convince me. I didn't get hurt. I saw the shot, couldn't take it. Father Time just got it.
By the time of his retirement, Muhammad Ali had taken an estimated 200,000 hits to the head. When asked if it was all worth it, he said he would do it all over again. Even the fights against Shavers and Holmes, the ones that might have changed his life for the better if he hadn't accepted them. 35 years later, Ali's former doctor Ferdy Pacheco, who since 1976 warned Ali and his people about the dangers of fighting in that physical state, met the greatest for the last time. Ali, now in full decline and almost unable to speak, forced 3 words out of his mouth. You was right. His Parkinson's disease was not properly diagnosed until 1984. Around that time, journalists and doctors were saying that he was suffering from social depression. Nothing could have been more incorrect. And even if we'll never really know what really caused this Parkinson's, we can surely say that when Ali's 1983 brain scan showed what then was called dementia pugilistica, it was because of all the beatings and punches he had taken in training and in fights from 76 to 81. What saddens so much is that we could have seen and heard much more of Ali out of the ring. It could have changed more lives, it could have changed more society with his influence even more than it did back in the day in the 80s and the 90s. Instead, that original fire he had inside could not be expressed anymore. His speeches, his actions were reduced progressively through the years. But even after 30 years, you could still see the look in his eye. That original fire still burned inside his soul, living through time, still himself wondering what could have been. Ali may had lost speech and movement, but never lost his burning heart that lived inside him. On June the 3rd, 2016, Muhammad Ali passed away after almost 40 years living and battling with his illness. What shocked medics was that his heart still kept beating for 30 minutes after everything else had shut down. Muhammad Ali never stopped fighting, and he never quit. He just listened too much to the wrong people, the ones that wanted him to fight the wrong battles for money. Instead, Muhammad Ali should have lived to fight another day outside of the ring.
What would you like people to think about you when you've gone?
I'd like for them to say he took a few cups of love. He took 1 tablespoon of patience, 1 teaspoon of generosity, 1 pint of kindness. He took 1 quart of laughter, 1 pinch of concern, and then he mixed willingness with happiness. He added lots of faith, and he stirred it up well. Then he spread it over a span of a lifetime, and he served it to each and every deserving person he met.
Muhammad Ali, thank you very much.